TitleMatchNetwork.com.
I never found Sid difficult to work with. Sid was a lot like me in the fact that I helped train and work out with Sid some of his first matches over there. We used him as humongous, put the gimmick on him from the movie The Road Warrior, and he just had that. He always had that great look, and of course the physical stature and all that kind of stuff. But Sid was a lot like me in the fact that Sid doesn't like to travel. Sid likes to be at home, and Sid likes to play softball just like I do. And I can honestly tell you that if given the choice of wrestling on the main event in Madison Square Garden or playing a softball game, wrestling in front of 18,000 people, or playing a softball game in front of nothing but with 20 of your friends, if you had the choice between the two, probably Sid and I would both choose the softball game. And a lot of people, think you're crazy or get a bad impression of you from that. But I think it's just a difference in priorities. And a lot of people give Sid the label of being difficult to work with simply because of things like that, maybe not showing up or something, so because he thought something else was more important or that sort of thing. But Sid was at least not for me, never difficult to work with in the ring. I thought we had a lot of good matches.
What are your memories of when Steve Austin came through the territory?
And that's another thing. Steve and I were talking about this the other day. I really don't remember Steve being in Memphis, although he assured me that he was. And I don't even know. He says he thinks he and I worked a couple of matches there, but I know probably what the situation was. When he came through, he was either not ready or they didn't have him in line to be in like a main event program. I'm sure I was working with somebody else, and Steve worked some what we call underneath matches or that sort of thing. And I don't guess he was there very long. I remember Steve more from when I was going down to Texas to work with Kerry Von Erich. I remember Steve being on those cards with the long blonde hair and stunning Steve Austin and his valet and all of that. That's my best memories of Steve down there.
What happened with the working agreement between Georgia Championship Wrestling and Ole Anderson? I remember it lasted for about 6 weeks when Gordon Solie came into the studio, did commentary with Lance, and some of the Georgia guys appeared on your TV. I think it was Ryan Garvin. The Irwins came up for a little bit of time. Was there a style conflict that caused an initial breakup between the two promotions, or?
You would probably be better answering that than me. I remember I remember Gordon coming up and working with us some. And I also remember, I guess at the same time, I remember me going down to Atlanta, and I was just fixing to work we did the big build-up for a program with Roddy Piper.
Right.
Roddy Piper and myself. And then...
I think he left the territory. Piper left.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
But I really have no idea why that association ended. But you're right, it did, and I don't know why. Probably just that was a situation where Jerry Jarrett was running the business end of it then, and probably just a situation where Jerry. Do you remember what year that was?
I don't know. It was like 83 or 84 maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I know that in like 1976, Jerry went down to help promote in Atlanta for Jim Barnett and asked me to come down. I actually went down and bought a condominium in Atlanta and wound up staying down there for a little bit, and then that didn't pan out. We came back in about a year or so. So I really don't remember what happened on that.
Okay, now a lot of TV shows, I guess, that you were on in the 80s in Memphis, there would be like a lot of knocks at Vince McMahon and WWF and stuff like that. And of course, everyone knows that you sued the World Wrestling Federation over Harley Race and the King. What actually led you guys to working together and you coming in to work for Vince?
Well, of course, as I said, we down in Memphis, our little mom and pop territory was one of the last remaining vestiges. We felt like we were the Alamo. We were the lone holdout of all of these At one time, I think there were like 32 promotional companies around the United States. And when Vince, of course, went nationwide, and most of these stars of these little small territories went to work for Vince. And then, of course, when Vince came back and ran the shows in that territory with their former stars, it just it blew the local promotions right out the window. And we were one of the last remaining territories. And I still say the reason that we were able to hold out was because I was like one of the only main featured stars from a territory that didn't go to work for Vince. Without a doubt, had I gone to work for Vince at that time, and then the WWF come back to work in Memphis with me, with them, it would have blown out what was left of the Memphis promotion. But because I had an ownership stake in the company, my main concern was our company. And that was the difference in like the other top wrestlers in these other territories. They weren't owners. They were just top talent. And so it was meant more money for them to go to work for Vince, and you can't blame them. If I had gone to work for Vince, it meant me losing my own company. Jerry and I were fiercely protective of that. And when Vince came in and tried to promote what we felt like were our cities and had always been in our territory, and especially using a guy like Harley Race and calling him the King, all of a sudden their advertising just said, WWF Wrestling featuring the King. I felt like this was confusing the public at the least. And so, I filed a lawsuit against Vince. And actually, I don't know, it never really went to court, I don't think, but I won a little bit of a battle in the fact that they actually held up the gate receipts from a show and that sort of thing. And then I guess they agreed to stop using that, the King of Wrestling term in our territory and that sort of thing. But Vince, he will still bring it up every now and then on occasion. Yeah, there's the King. He sued us one time, But Vince is from a wrestling family, and he knows exactly what that was all about. He knows why, and I think actually respects me for that, because he knows I was just, we were trying to protect our company, and he was trying to do what he thought was best for his company, and it was just that was just one of those business things that there was nothing personal about it. We said a lot of bad things about the WWF because we were afraid of them. We knew that they had put almost everybody else out of business, and we felt like we were next on the list. So we were doing everything in our power and trying to convince our fans to remain loyal to us and not get swept away with this WWF craze. So I guess in 1993, we were still hanging on, and the thing with Vince was basically up until that time, you pretty much had to sign an exclusive contract with Vince McMahon or with the WWF. You went to work for Vince, and that was it. You worked for the WWF and pretty much nobody else. And somehow we came to an agreement to where Vince would allow me to work for them and still work in Memphis, which was pretty unique at that time. And then that made everything fine. I think Vince realized. I think he was probably thinking on a more long range basis than we were. I think Vince realized that it's to his benefit to keep small territories like this alive and around, because there's got to be some place for his next superstars to come from. You can't just take somebody off the street and start them in the World Wrestling Federation on Monday Night Raw or on SmackDown. You need places for these guys to learn the ropes and become somewhat stars before they're brought up to the WWF. So that's how our working relationship formed, and it's really worked out great. And the fact that I've been able to do everything that I've needed to do in the WWF, but still been able to do everything we needed down in our Memphis territory to keep that alive and be able to wrestle down there and still work with the young talent and all that sort of thing. So it's it really it became one of those unselfish things where Vince said, "Okay, I don't have to have this guy exclusively," and it worked out good for everybody.
When you first got in the locker room, was there heat with you and anybody, or what were your initial impressions of Vince himself?
In the WWF locker room?
Right.
Yeah, excuse me. I think there was obviously some heat with somebody because when I first got to the WWF, I think like the first week up there, somebody took a crap in my crown, and so I figured I must have heat with somebody. But what that's sort of one of those heat and rib combinations.
Right.
But what you got to understand is, as I said, this business is, there's a lot of guys, these guys, but they're not really your friends. You will be friendly towards them and that sort of thing. But when you're in a position of being the booker or the owner of a territory, you're just going to naturally get heat with guys. I mean, everybody that's in this business thinks that they should be. I can assure you, everybody that's in this business today thinks that they should be the main event at the upcoming WrestleMania. They think that they're that good. And that's not a bad thing, because if you don't believe in yourself and if you don't have the confidence in your own ability, then you're not going to make it anyway. So in everybody's mind, they believe that they're the best and they should be on the top in the main events every night. And if you don't agree with them, then you're going to have heat with them. I mean, that's the way a lot of people think, and that's just a fact of life. So over the years, in the 20 years that Jerry Jarrett and I had the Memphis territory, and in all of the years that I booked or made payoffs or owned that territory, a lot of the guys resented either the way they were used, they didn't feel like they were put in the main event, or you weren't used right, or they weren't paid enough, and so there was just that natural heat with a lot of guys, and that's just I knew that, and it's a fact of life. And so then all of a sudden, when I came to work with the WWF, it was like, oh, well, here's the king, here's Lawler. Now he's just one of the boys. He's just like us. He's not the boss here. He's not the owner here. And so, there was, as I said, a couple of ribs like that. But I immediately went to Vince and I said, if this is the way it's going to be, then I just don't need to be here. And he was cool, and I'm sure inwardly he probably thought it was funny and everything, but he was enough of a professional that he told everybody that, hey, we want Jerry here, and we're going to all work together, and we're going to all be professionals. And so, from that time on, everything's been cool. And Vince, I can honestly say that I have never had a crossword with Vince. He has been always gone out of his way to be as nice as he could to me, done things for me that go way beyond the call of duty, so to speak. And I can't say a bad word about Vince McMahon.
TitleMatchNetwork.com